We're back with Jim. We've rigged him, texted him, and we've taken him in world and checked him out. And he was looking pretty good, but however, I did find a couple of problems with him which we need to address. But before we do that, just something I want to point out. I've got new Jim selected here, new Jim, but we come over to the outliner. He appears to be gone, but he's not. What we have here, we've got our copies we made. One was a full-size copy, I think that one, from before we scaled him down, rotated him to suit the armature. And the other one was a copy we made over on layer 20. Was it? Yeah. Okay, so that's the one on layer 1, and layer 20 would be this one here. Yeah. Okay, well, I think I'm done with these two now, and just in the interest of tidying up this file, I'm going to delete these. So I could select them here and delete them. And he's gone. Let's go back to layer 1. Another way to delete an object is simply to right click it in the outliner and delete. Okay, so I'm just left with my original model. But anyway, as I said, Jim 1, or new Jim, I'm sorry, appears to be gone, but he's not. He's there on the screen. What actually happens is when we parented him to the armature, he becomes a subset of the armature. Okay, so he's not lost, he's not disappeared from the outliner, he's in there. Okay, the problems. Right. First one, noticed, let's go into a pose mode. So I'll select the armature and go into pose mode. Right, if I select the head here, and I rotate that head, as I rotate it, can you see this spike coming out the back of his head? Okay, this is a badly weighted vertex, so it's something we need to address. Okay, the other problem, if I select this eye, let me rotate the eye on a Z, so it's kind of left and right. You see how it's affecting the whole head? We don't want that. We want this to only affect the eye whenever we get around to making the eye. We don't want it to affect the head at all. And same on the other eye. Okay, so we need to address that. So let's address those first. One way we could do that is if we go into weight paint mode. And we can see the influence that this bone, this selected bone, is having on the eye. So we could come across to weight paint and bring the weight down to 0, so it'll paint blue, and start to paint that out. But you see, as I'm doing this, the weights are kind of moving around a bit, and it's going to take a bit of effort to do this. Okay. There is another way to remove the weight, or remove the influence the bone has. So if I come back into object mode, let's select this bone. Okay, and let's come across to the actual bone tab. Okay, if we go, actually need to be in edit mode for this. Okay, if we go into edit mode and the bone tab, we'll see a checkbox here that says deform. There are some options underneath, but anyway, what this checkbox means is with this bone selected, this bone will deform the mesh, will deform Jim here, and we don't want to do that. So let's uncheck that. Let's select the other eye bone and let's uncheck that. Okay, let's go back into an object mode. Let's select our Jim and shift select our armature, and let's parent him again, Control P. We'll do that with automatic weights. Now if we select the armature, let's go into a pose mode. This bone selected. As I rotate the bone around now, it's having no influence on the mesh there. Okay, and same with the other one. So rotate around, it's having no influence. So that's that fixed. We can go around and check some of the other bones, and it's still working as expected. There we go. So yeah, I don't think we've got any problems there, but the eye bone is having no more effect. That's exactly what we wanted. Now when we go to make the eyes, we're going to have to do the opposite. We're going to have to make sure none of the other bones have a deformation on the eyes when we parent them, but the eye bones do. So anyway, that's easy enough. Right, the next problem we had. Okay, let's choose a neck here. Let me go into a side view here. Side view. Alright, let's zoom in a bit. As I rotate the neck, you see this spike coming out the back of his head. This spike here. Okay, this means it's a badly weighted vertex. Now trying to find this, we can kind of like look and guess and then go into edit mode, or actually weight paint mode, and we're not seeing a problem back here. We can go through all the bones to see what's affecting up there. We can do that in the object data tab, and we go to vertex group. We've got all these bones, you know, so that's the neck. I can select the head and the vertex group, and that will show the weights associated with the head bone. It doesn't seem to be a problem back here. Same with the skull, that's all looking even. Eyes. Why is right eye still showing that? Oh, because it's on the original mesh. Don't worry about that, we know that's okay. Okay, but we're not seeing a problem there. So let's go back into object mode. Well, actually, let's go to edit mode. And we're not seeing many problems. So we know it's in this kind of area here. One thing we can do is we can start selecting these vertices one by one and seeing what bones are having an influence here, and if anything's looking out of shape, you know. So these are all affected by the skull and the head. We're not seeing any difference here. So let's go through them. This one, the neck, skull and head. Yeah, I'd expect some neck influence around about there. Even though that's next to that, the neck influence is 0, but that's nothing. Skull and head, skull and head, skull and head. And we can just start to, once again, neck's getting an influence there. We can just start to go through it, and we're not seeing anything untoward. Okay, so this was actually quite difficult to find, and the way I found it was I saved my file. Okay, so I can come back to this point. Okay, then what I did, well, actually, let's do that. Let's file save on desktop. Let's call him, where is he? Jim rigged textured, and save that file. Okay, then what I did is I went into a side view. It was actually a front view because the rig's rotated, but I went into a side view. Okay, and I selected the head bone, and I rotated by a nominal amount, let's say 20 degrees. So I'm looking at the bottom corner of my screen here where it says rotation, and I rotated him by 20 degrees. Okay, the reason I did that precise amount is because when I go back, I know how far to rotate it back. But anyway, this will become clear in a minute. So with that, I selected the body mesh, and I made a copy, which was Shift D, entered. Okay, then I moved that copy to layer number 2, layer 2. Okay, so now if we come across to layer 2, we've got this copy. What I'm going to do here is apply the armature to freeze this mesh. So I apply. Alright, so now I can go into edit mode, and I can see this vertex where the problem was. So I can select this vertex, and I can see it's actually got a chest influence here on this vertex. Okay, so I've identified the vertex, and I've identified the problem. Right. Okay. And I'm looking around, and where that vertex is, it's kind of where this geometry comes together into a triangle. Right. Let's go back into object mode, and let's delete that one. Let's go back to layer 1. Okay. Select Jim. If I edit him now, he should snap back, and which he does. Okay. But I'm looking down in this area where this geometry comes together. As I zoom in, what I can see is somehow we got a stray vertex here. It's not actually straight. I think it's when we were making quads everywhere, and this was the seam line. But however, this vertex, and if we check it, that's the one with the influence from the chest, whereas the others have influences from the head and neck, which we'd expect. Okay, this singular vertex here is the problem. Okay, so to fix that, I thought, well, I could try and weight it the same as the others, or similar to the others, but it might be easier. This vertex isn't actually doing us any favours. I shift selected the second or the vertex below it, and I merged them at the last. Okay, so that vertex is now gone. So let's go back to object mode. The spike has kind of gone there because we merged that vertex back in. Let's pick up this head bone again. Let's go into the side view, making sure I'm in ortho view, and I can rotate it minus 20 degrees to bring it back to where it was. Okay, so now as I rotate round, that spiky vertex is fixed. Okay, now as you start to make clothes or something, and especially when you're working on a standard SL avatar in its T pose, this here is actually kind of a cross between a T and an A pose, because the legs are spread further apart than the SL avatar normally is. That's something we edited in, so it doesn't happen on this. But what happens with the SL avatar, when the legs are straight, especially when you're making trousers and pants and that, these bones are so close together, they're kind of like here, that you get some cross influence, from the right knee to the left leg, and you start getting spikes around about the knee areas. So that's one way to kind of isolate and find where these spikes, where these influences are coming from. So that's him fixed. The back of the head's fixed, no more spiking, and the eye should be fixed. Yep, no influence there anymore. No influence there anymore. Okay, so that's good. Right. Next we're going to make some clothes for Jim, but I think we'll stop here for a minute, and then we'll have a look at making some clothes.